Unveiling the Cold War, a journey through time and tension. The Cold War, a global struggle between the United States and the Soviet Union, began in 1947 and lasted until 1991. This period was marked by a fierce rivalry that stopped short of full-scale war, with both superpowers vying for dominance across the world stage, setting the groundwork for decades of tension. At the heart of the Cold War was an ideological divide between democracy, championed by the United States, and communism, represented by the Soviet Union. Emerging from the ruins of World War II, this clash of beliefs influenced global politics, leading to a world sharply divided along ideological lines. The Truman Doctrine marked a pivotal shift in U.S. foreign policy. Announced in 1947, it committed the United States to a strategy of containment, aiming to prevent the spread of communism beyond its existing borders. This policy shaped American actions and interventions during the Cold War era. In an effort to rebuild war-torn Europe and contain the spread of communism, the United States launched the Marshall Plan. This ambitious program provided over $12 billion in aid to Western European countries, helping to rebuild their economies and solidify an alliance against the Soviet influence. The descent of the Iron Curtain epitomized the division of Europe. Coined by Winston Churchill, the term described the stark divide between the communist East and the democratic West, symbolizing the beginning of an era where Europe would be split into two distinct spheres of influence. The formation of NATO in 1949 marked a pivotal moment in Cold War history, establishing a solid alliance among Western countries against the perceived threat of communism. This military alliance was a clear signal of the West's readiness to counter Soviet influence, creating a stark division between the East and West. In response, the Warsaw Pact was established in 1955, unifying Eastern European countries under the Soviet Union's military command. This counter-alliance solidified the ideological divide in Europe, turning the continent into a battleground of competing military strategies and further entrenching the Cold War's divisions. The Berlin blockade and subsequent airlift in 1948-49 underscored the escalating tensions. When the Soviet Union blocked all ground routes into West Berlin, the Western Allies responded by airlifting essential supplies into the city. This bold maneuver highlighted the West's commitment to defending its sphere of influence and became a symbol of resistance against Soviet pressure. The nuclear arms race began as both superpowers raced to develop and stockpile nuclear weapons, escalating the stakes of the Cold War. This deadly competition led to the creation of vast arsenals capable of global destruction, instilling a pervasive fear of nuclear annihilation across the world. The Korean War exemplified Cold War dynamics extending into Asia, presenting a stark manifestation of the global struggle against communism. It was a proxy war where the US and its allies supported South Korea against the North's Soviet-backed forces, further illustrating the global reach of Cold War confrontations. The Suez Crisis marked a pivotal moment in Cold War politics as it unfolded in the Middle East. In 1956, Egypt nationalized the Suez Canal, prompting a military response from France, the UK, and Israel. This event underscored the global reach of Cold War tensions, drawing in superpowers and highlighting the strategic importance of the Middle East in the geopolitical chess game between the United States and the Soviet Union. The launch of Sputnik by the USSR in 1957 sent shockwaves around the world, signaling Soviet superiority in space technology. This event not only marked the beginning of the space race, but also heightened fears in the West about the potential for Soviet dominance in military and technological capabilities. Sputnik became a symbol of the intense competition that defined the Cold War era. The Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962 brought the world to the brink of nuclear war. When the United States discovered Soviet missiles in Cuba, a tense 13-day standoff ensued. President Kennedy's decision to enforce a naval blockade around Cuba eventually led to a Soviet agreement to dismantle the missiles, averting a catastrophic nuclear conflict and highlighting the razor's edge on which global peace balanced during the Cold War. The construction of the Berlin Wall in 1961 solidified the physical and ideological division between East and West Berlin. As a tangible symbol of the Iron Curtain, the wall stood as a grim reminder of the deep rifts within Europe, separating families and stifling freedom under the guise of protecting the socialist state. Its erection emphasized the stark differences in ideology and governance between the two blocs. The Vietnam War exemplified the lengths to which the United States was willing to go to contain communism. Beginning as a modest advisory mission, it escalated into a full-blown conflict, drawing in hundreds of thousands of American troops. This war not only strained American resources and public patience, but also highlighted the complexities and human costs of proxy wars, becoming a contentious and polarizing issue within the United States and around the world. The Prague Spring of 1968 marked a brief period of reform and liberalization in Czechoslovakia under Alexander Dubček. His aim to create socialism with a human face was seen as a threat to Soviet authority in the region, leading to the Warsaw Pact invasion of Czechoslovakia, crushing the reforms and restoring hardline communist rule. The invasion underscored the Soviet Union's determination to maintain its sphere of influence in Eastern Europe, sending a clear message to other communist states contemplating reform. The event chilled East-West relations, which had shown signs of warming, and reaffirmed the ideological divide across the Iron Curtain. In a different theater, the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979 marked a significant escalation of Cold War tensions. Seeking to prop up a communist government facing internal rebellion, the USSR's intervention drew international condemnation and triggered a decade-long conflict, which became known as the Soviet Union's Vietnam. The United States responded to the Soviet aggressions by supporting anti-communist movements worldwide, notably the Mujahideen in Afghanistan. This support not only aimed to counter Soviet expansion, but also to bleed the USSR militarily and economically, contributing to its eventual collapse. It showcased the U.S. strategy of indirect engagement in Cold War conflicts. The Reagan Doctrine further intensified the U.S. commitment to opposing global communism, supporting insurgencies in Latin America, Africa, and Asia. This aggressive stance, coupled with a significant military buildup and the Strategic Defense Initiative, aimed to economically and strategically pressure the Soviet Union, setting the stage for the Cold War's endgame. The Reagan Doctrine marked a significant shift in U.S. foreign policy, advocating for active support of anti-communist movements worldwide. This aggressive stance aimed to roll back Soviet influence by providing military and financial aid to guerrilla forces, symbolizing a renewed American commitment to defeating communism on a global scale. With the introduction of the Strategic Defense Initiative, popularly known as Star Wars, the arms race escalated into outer space. This ambitious program sought to develop a missile defense system that could protect the United States from nuclear attacks, highlighting the technological and military rivalry between the US and the USSR. Mikhail Gorbachev's ascent to power introduced groundbreaking reforms within the Soviet Union. Perestroika and glasnost aimed to revitalize the Soviet economy through restructuring and promote openness in government affairs. These policies signaled a move towards more liberal governance, inadvertently setting the stage for the Soviet Union's eventual dissolution. The fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 became the most iconic symbol of the Cold War's end. This momentous event, which saw East and West Germans unite to tear down the wall, epitomized the collapse of communist regimes across Eastern Europe and the longing for freedom and democracy. The revolutions of 1989 swept through Eastern Europe, with nations shaking off Soviet control in a domino effect. These peaceful transitions marked a significant turning point, as countries such as Poland, Hungary, and Czechoslovakia moved towards democratic governance and market economies, casting off decades of communist rule. The dissolution of the Warsaw Pact marked a monumental shift in global power dynamics, signaling the end of Eastern Europe's military allegiance to the Soviet Union. This event underscored the weakening of communist influence across Europe, paving the way for newfound independence among former Soviet states and allies. The breakup of the Soviet Union in 1991 stands as a historic watershed, dismantling over 7 decades of communist rule in Russia and its satellite states. This collapse reshaped the world's geopolitical landscape, leading to the emergence of 15 independent nations and significantly altering global political ideologies. The aftermath and global impact of the Cold War have been profound, influencing international relations, economic policies, and military strategies for decades. The ideological tussle between democracy and communism left a legacy of proxy wars, nuclear arms races, and political divisions that continue to affect global diplomacy and security. Proxy wars became a defining aspect of the Cold War's global battlegrounds, with superpowers engaging in indirect conflicts in regions from Latin America to Africa. These conflicts were fueled by the desire to expand spheres of influence without triggering direct confrontation, often leaving lasting scars on the nations involved. Nuclear proliferation during the Cold War era introduced a looming threat of annihilation, fundamentally changing the nature of international conflict. The arms race led to the stockpiling of thousands of nuclear weapons, instilling a pervasive fear of global catastrophe while also deterring direct military conflict between superpowers. The cultural Cold War was as much a battle of ideologies as it was of arms, with both the East and West using propaganda, art, and media to sway global opinion. This era saw the creation of powerful imagery and narratives designed to reinforce the superiority of each side's way of life. Espionage and intelligence gathering became the silent undercurrent of the Cold War, with spies becoming both heroes and villains in this secretive war. The work of intelligence agencies like the CIA and KGB was crucial, involving covert operations, surveillance, and the decoding of enemy communications to gain the upper hand. The United Nations, though intended as a platform for global peace, often found itself in the middle of Cold War tensions. Its role in mediating conflicts, peacekeeping, and promoting human rights was frequently challenged by the differing agendas of the superpowers, highlighting the complexities of international diplomacy during this period. Economic warfare took the form of trade embargoes and sanctions, with the superpowers attempting to strangle each other's economies. These economic tactics were aimed at weakening adversaries without direct military confrontation, but often led to widespread suffering among the civilian populations of targeted nations. Cold War politics extended into the realm of sports and the Olympics, turning athletic competitions into ideological battlegrounds. Athletes became unwitting soldiers in this war, with their victories touted as proof of their country's superiority, further blurring the lines between politics and sports. The environmental legacy of the Cold War is marked by the haunting aftermath of nuclear testing. These tests, conducted in the quest for military supremacy, left indelible scars on the planet, contributing to radioactive contamination and health issues that persist to this day, showcasing a darker aspect of the quest for power. Technological advancements from the space race, however, highlight a more positive outcome. This intense competition led to innovations that have shaped modern technology, from satellite communications to GPS systems. The legacy of this era demonstrates how rivalry can sometimes propel humanity forward, pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Cold War influences permeated not just politics, but culture, with literature and cinema serving as mediums of propaganda and reflection. Films and books from this period provided a lens through which the public could grasp the complexities of global tensions, often shaping or reinforcing public perceptions and attitudes towards the ideological divide. Espionage and intelligence operations were the lifeblood of Cold War strategy, with spies becoming both vilified and romanticized figures. Their daring acts of espionage are legendary, highlighting the extreme lengths nations would go to gather intelligence and secure their own interests, often at great personal and ethical cost. Today, the lessons of the Cold War remain pertinent, serving as a cautionary tale of ideological extremism, the dangers of nuclear proliferation, and the importance of diplomacy. As current global challenges echo the tensions of the past, understanding this era is crucial for navigating modern international relations and preventing history from repeating itself. Thanks for joining me on this journey. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more awesome content coming your way.